Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Garage Gym Athlete Podcast. It's one of those few and far between interviews. I don't do a lot of these anymore, but when I have someone who I think is awesome, complete badass, worth bringing onto the show, we definitely going to do them. And today, that is Matt Silver. Matt, how's it going, man?
I'm good. I'm good. How are you, Jerred?
I'm good. So, I've been working with Matt for a long time, and he wrote the book Built to Run, which I think is a phenomenal book. We're going to be discussing some of that and all things running, strength training, foot health, everything else. But before we get into any of that, man, how about a quick intro to the listeners? Who you are, what you do, how do you train, all that good stuff. Catch us up there.
Yeah, I'm a physical therapist. I live in Frederick, Maryland, with my wife and son Luke. Kind of, we see a lot of distance runners, a lot of just active people, right? A lot of CrossFitters, a lot of people who do, they do F45, right? Maybe they do their own programming. They have that, right? They have a home gym, which I have one myself, which, especially during COVID, I'm really glad I have one. Um, but yeah, kind of became a PT from being just very injured. Kind of motivation for the book too, of why I became a PT, why I wrote the book, was very injured as a runner growing up, where I really just all I did was run. I didn't really do a whole lot of like squatting and deadlifting and just things to build me up to handle the loads that running places on me, which is again, it's like running in place like 200%, 250% of your body weight every step you take. So it's a lot of force in your body. So we have to make sure we're doing the right things. I wasn't doing that, so I kind of crashed and burned, and it doesn't kill you, makes you stronger. So I kind of rose from the ashes and said, I'm all beat up, but I'm not going to give up, and kind of made myself more of a bulletproof runner. And now if I want to go run a half marathon, I have one coming up, the Frederick Half in early May that I've been training for. Well, got food poisoning recently, but coming back from that, after a week of not doing too much and getting back into it. But yeah, so I still do a good amount of running. Kind of interested in high rocks now, but man, those events are
Yeah,
sold out. It's hard to get into high rocks. There's one in
yeah, it
DC
is.
that is sold out, so I'd love to do that. But really, my training now is it's kind of hybrid. But I do enjoy running. But I understand the benefit of hey, we have to be doing other things besides running. And and especially your audience, Jerred, who's listening to this, is maybe they don't do as much running, but they just want to do it and enjoy it, or maybe they do really enjoy it. We just know that there's things we have to do to be able to run. Whether you're going to be, hey, all I want to do is run. I want to be great at marathons, or I just want to be able to run the local half marathon or 10K, even a local marathon, and be able to crush that and not just crash and burn, trying to do it.
Yeah, I think running is just one of those things that is inherently human. Like I wouldn't say I'm in love with running, but I do run quite frequently, right? I think it's just such a good way to push yourself. I think the fitness you can get from it is phenomenal, and we do in our programming give athletes the option a lot of times for like, hey, today we're doing zone two conditioning. You can run, you can bike, you can row, whatever you want to do. But we do have a lot of runners in the program, a lot of people who select running as their main modality over anything else. And to be honest, it makes a lot more sense than hopping on a bike unless you have a machine or something like that. But one thing that does come up with running in our community and anyone I've talked to, it's almost like running and injury is synonymous, right? It's like they just go hand in hand with a lot of people from what I've seen. And I don't know if that has to be the case, right? But like, why do you think that injuries pop up so frequently with the recreational runner?
Yeah, yeah, that's the million-dollar question, right? Is like, I think the stat thrown around is, I remember when I was in PT school, it was like 30% to like 80% of runners are injured in a given year. Well, okay, I don't know wherever those studies are coming from. Let's just cut it in the middle. Probably 50% of runners, however you define an injury, stops you from running, whatever it is, right? Probably half the runners that are running right now might have some injury that stops them from running for a period of time. Like, well, like, okay, it's good to know that, but why is that happening in the first place? I think of running, Jerred, as like it's a high impact sport that happens over a very long period of time. So it's a single leg hop, kind of an alternating right, it's left, right, and there's some float time in between. So by definition, you're hopping, you're jumping from leg to leg, and that happens. I mean, if you run a 10K, that happens around 10,000 times, give or take. Maybe a few hundred depending on how long your stride is. But I mean, you run a 10K, that's 10,000 steps. You run a half marathon, that's even more steps. I mean, it's you run an ultra marathon. If you run a 50K, that's 50,000 steps you're taking during that race, and it's high impact, right? It's I think I said it before. It's around 2 to 2.5 times your body weight. It's even more. It's I don't know. I think about it differently when I think it's 200 to 250% times your body weight. So if I weigh around 150, so that's easily more than 300 pounds of force equivalent every step I take. So if all we're doing is running, especially if we're like, hey, I sit at a computer all day. I'm a lawyer. I'm a doctor. I'm just not really crazy active all day, and then I finish my job and I want to go work out and go hard. If all we're doing is I go to work and maybe my hips are tight and I don't have the strength, and then I go run. Well, we're not preparing our bodies to handle the loads that running's placing on us. Where if we just spend a little bit of time, which strength training is a big part of it, but mobility is also, hey, my hips are tight. It's going to be really hard to get that leg behind you to find that second gear and third gear, and you might compensate in a certain way. So there's multiple things that cause it, but I mean the big overview is we're just not preparing our bodies to handle that load, but also from a mobility standpoint, we're not preparing our bodies to be put in those positions where if we know we need, I mean, you get like 30, 40 degrees of hip extension when you're running really, really fast. Well, if you're trying to hit that faster pace and your hips can't open up, well, we're going to compensate somehow. And sometimes a lot of runners get back pain, and that pelvis can do some really weird rotations if we can't get that leg behind us.
Yeah, I remember we had a conversation. I think, yeah, I mean, you were still, I don't want to say early stages of the book, but you were in the middle of writing your book, and I was going through a back injury at the time, and I was also training for that ultra marathon, and it was just so frustrating. And one of the things that helped me, that we discussed, was fixing my cadence, because I had a run coach, and then I was also talking to you, and I didn't know how many steps per minute I was supposed to be running, and I'd been running
Yeah.
like forever. And I mean, like, actually putting, not like 50 miles, 100 miles a week, like true runners would, but like running all throughout the military. It's something that's part of every single week of my life, for the most part. And it's something I literally had never paid attention to in my entire life. It was just like my cadence in any capacity. And once you kind of gave me a number to like shoot for, I was like, oh, okay. And then like I started to like figure out how to do that. To be honest, that was a huge unlock for me in the back pain, because my back pain was very much muscular. It was from a previous injury, and it was just that repetitive motion would basically cause my like right lat to almost lock up. It wasn't anything like
Mhm.
horrific. It was just like, oh gosh, and like it just made it to where I didn't want to run anymore, and that was a huge unlock. Do you think that, I don't want to say like, oh, that's everybody's problem, but like, why do you
Mhm.
think cadence is often not something that's really like discussed, that all that much, outside of the people who are like runners, like I've never, and I've been in the fitness industry for a long time, still nothing I ever paid attention to until the last couple of years.
Yeah. No, that's a good point. I think it's like, yeah, why is it not talked about as much? I think from the running, I think a lot of people know, at least for like if they're like a runner, you're like, hey, I've heard 180, right? Like that number 180 is thrown around a lot, which that is a great number to shoot for, but right, we have different leg lengths, and if someone who has shorter legs, their cadence is probably going to be faster than like for me. Like if I sit next to my wife, she's actually taller than me, but when I stand up, I'm like 4 inches taller than her because like I have a shorter torso and I have longer legs, which happens. I guess that's great for running, but my cadence is probably going to be a little bit not as high of a cadence as someone who has shorter or yeah, I'm going to have a smaller or a shorter. What am I trying to say here? I'm not going to have as fast of a cadence as someone who has shorter legs than me. I need my tongue tied in for a second.
Mm.
Um, but yeah, I think it's probably not talked about as much because I mean, typically the people that talk about it the most is like when I see like a high school kid and they're like, "Hey, I just joined a track team," and they're super new to it, and their cadence is like, I mean, they're just smacking the foot down. I mean, it's like 140. It's super, super slow. That's where, man, if we address if that issue with that person, tends to solve a lot of their problems. What was your cadence at, Jared? Do you know what it was
Oh,
before? It was
dude,
like
I was just thinking
160s.
that when you said it. I mean, I feel like I was in like the high 130s to like low 140s, something like that was like my average cadence when I'd go for a run, something like that.
Yeah, that like if it's that low, if we just make the change of hey, the minimum we want to shoot for is like 160, 180, if we really want to get technical, great, but if we're going to make 80% of the gain with like 20% of the effort. Let's just get you to 160. That tends to solve lots of cadence problems. So that's a
And
big thing. Is we
that's where I ended up was like 160 to 170. 180 was kind of almost unrealistic for me unless it was super fast runs. I've talked about that on the podcast before. It's like once I start sprinting, because I was a sprinter in high school, it's just like once I start sprinting, everything is good. It's like I'm hitting the cadence, like
Yeah,
everything's
yeah, yeah.
great. But it's slow runs. I was horrible at. I just didn't understand how to apply that. And once you kind of think through it a little bit, it's definitely helps you enjoy running a little bit more. Um, and I think aside from cadence, it's like I think that's something a big thing that people don't know. But another thing that I think is people are very unaware of, me especially, is just foot health in general. Um, you know, and that's kind of what I'm trying to uncover with you because I we could go into so many topics of like going deep with Matt here, and this is just for the listeners. Like Matt has a book, it's called Built to Run. Like if you want to go get it, go grab it. Like it's phenomenal if you really want to dive into this stuff. But some of the things I'm going to be hitting on with him is just like the things that people don't know about running a lot of times. And I think another one is foot health. So what are your thoughts on foot health in general?
Yeah, that's it's actually it's a topic that is just very it's not talked about nearly as much just in general, but especially in the running community. Because I mean, remember when I was in high school, I had like if you looked at my toenails are much better now, but if you looked at them in high school, Jared, I mean, they're just like super thick nails, and not to gross anybody out, but it's like that's just like and I see a runner in here, I can just tell. I'm like, there's always like one toe where it's just like, oh yeah, I've lost that nail twice, or it always falls off, blah blah blah. And I'm like, I don't think that's really normal. I mean, sometimes, yes, if you run so much, I'm sure if you don't want to get a shoe that's too big or too wide, but I think a lot of times we're just doing our feet a disservice by placing them in shoes that have a crap ton of support, a crap ton of cushion and support, and especially when they're narrow too. Like our foot is meant to spread out in the front, and here's just a quick little like tidbit of like how our foot just naturally works. I'm not anti-shoe. I think if you're running an ultra marathon, it's really hard to run barefoot or in a minimal shoe. That's a lot of stress on your foot. Get some cushion. I'm not saying you're right. I'm not anti-cushion. If you love your Hokas, go for it. But it's just an example of how, man, the shoes that we wear today can really negatively impact our foot. Is the front of the foot, the forefoot, kind of where like the ball of your feet are. If you look on like the backside of that, that wants to spread out. And if your toes, if our toes are all just scrunched together, the muscles get stiff like that. There's muscles in between in between the forefoot bones that actually, when they contract, they help spread the foot out. But if that is all stiff and can't spread out, the toes can't spread, the forefoot can't spread out. Well, that's actually it's going to actually turn our arch off. If we can allow our foot to spread when it hits the ground, we allow it to that forefoot to actually assist with pronation. It actually sends a signal to our brain that says, "Hey, turn the midfoot on, turn the arch on in the middle of the foot." So that splaying of the front of the foot sends a signal. I mean, it happens really quick, but it sends a signal to the brain that sends a signal back to the foot that says, "Hey, turn the arch on." So your foot being able to spread out and splay out, and your toes can press into the ground. That actually tells your foot and your arch to actually, hey, contract isometrically and create some stability here. Which when we push off, we want to have a foot that's not really rigid, but stiff is probably the best word. You want to have a nice stiff lever to push from, not a floppy foot where you can't get a lot of force and leverage. So that's just one example of, man, if we can start to reverse some of these effects of, hey, my feet are all clawed up. It doesn't have to be the 80-year-old who goes to the podiatrist because their feet are, they got the hammer toes. I see patients in here where it's just the beginning of the hammer toe. We want our toes to be flat, and if we get a little bit of that hammering, that starts the process. That's what it looks like when you're 30, 40 years old. 40 years later, you get the really bad hammer toes. But if we can address this now, get the arch turned on, allow the foot to spread out. And again, I'm not anti-shoe. I think we need to be putting our feet in especially walking in shoes that are much more minimal. I'm a huge fan of that because research shows that even just walking in minimal style shoes with not a lot of cushion on them, that improves the strength and actually like they call it, like the volume, the surface area of your arch muscle. It turns them on. It gets your foot more active. So I'm a huge fan. If you want to run in shoes that have cushion, I'm not going to force anyone to change that. But if you can at least walk in shoes that are more minimal, that allow your foot to spread out. Again, even when you're walking, that same thing happens. You want that forefoot to spread. Huge for foot health. Very, very. It's amazing for foot health.
Yeah, I think I've definitely played around a lot with different shoe types. I think I have a wider foot. The brand I landed on specifically for me was Ultra. They just had like a wide toe box, and that's been good for me. lately. I mean, do you have any specific brands like for running that you recommend? I know, and again, like I'm okay mentioning brands and not mentioning brands because we have no
Yeah, yeah.
sponsors, and I also hate certain brands. But I hate Nike shoes. I just hate them. Like
Oh yeah.
I can't, like they're too narrow. They squish my foot, but that's my foot specifically. So I don't know if it's actually a bad shoe. But like, do you have any brands that you're a fan of?
Yeah, I'm also not a big fan of Nike because I mean, yeah, all feet having a flatter foot or a higher arch foot, like it's like eye color. We have different eye colors. We're gonna have normal variation within arch heights, and like, someone might be just a natural, a little more narrow of a foot. Uh, if you want to wear a Nike and it feels great, that's fine. Not a big fan of them. I do like Ultra. Um, I know a lot of the shoe stores in the area here in Maryland, and just through the grapevine, I've heard things where I think Puma bought them. They're not. I know another shoe company owns them. They've been getting slightly. They've been getting a little bit more narrow of a toe box. It's still wider, but it's been getting
I've
a
heard
little
the
bit more
same
narrow.
thing. Like there was some purchase. I think I was reading it in there because I'm due for a new pair, and I like saw like some of their reviews, and they were like, "Oh, shoes suck ever since they got bought out," and I was like, "Uh oh, something to pay attention to." So that's why I got to find my next brand if Ultra's not going to cut it. So what else? What else do you like?
Yeah. Yeah, I'm a big fan of Zero. I know other people like Vivo. I think they're fine. I don't know. I kind of get this thing. Like, I don't mind spending money on stuff that works, Jared. Like, I'm not cheap. I'll spend if something works, I'll spend money on it. It's hard. I don't know. It's hard for me to wrap my head around how a Vivo shoe is more expensive than a shoe that has all this cushion in it. I don't know. I'm not paying for all the foam, so it's just. I think
Right.
Zero is a great shoe. It's actually just a cool thing. I have mine. I can actually show you guys. I don't know if you have the video on here, Jared, but
Yeah.
these little things here. These kind of straps that go around the shoe. It's actually been shown in the research that just a little bit of that sensation. It kind of you don't want the foot. It's not like stiff to your foot, but it's going to move with your foot. Again, it's not like locking it in, but having those little straps there on the zeros, it actually has been shown to improve your proprioception. So when your foot hits the
Hmm.
ground, it's like your foot is just doing what it's naturally doing, which is exactly what we want. Typically, when you have shoes like a Hoka or Asics, all that cushion, that stack height, it kind of forces your foot to move depending on how you hit the ground. Like there's an angle and your foot hits and it's going to quickly roll over into pronation. Where this has been shown to really improve. Like if you have a lot of ankle sprains, this is great because it's gonna morph with your foot and move with your foot and not the other way around. You don't want your shoe to move your foot. You want your foot to move the shoe or move with the shoe. So I'm big fan of Zero. Vivo's great. Zero Vivo also used to have like much better coloring and like I don't know, just I think they had better marketing. Zero I think now has much better style shoes. So whether you're just going to walk around, if you're going to run with them, it's great. But also I think some people are like, well, it's got to look professional. They make more professional looking shoes. If whatever you work in an office, they have to be like a black or a brown color. They 'cause, like Zero tends to have pretty good colors. And one more thing too, Jared, I want to say is I have these insoles from. I'm surprised this company is not more well known. You can't see the brand on here because it faded away, but it's called Barefoot Science, and they essentially it's not an orthotic, it's an insole. That the only negative about any shoe that we wear is even minimal shoes is that the feedback you're getting is going to be constant. Right, like you hit the ground, maybe you can feel a difference if you're on concrete versus grass. You'll probably feel like more bumps and stuff, but right? It's not like you're actually barefoot. You're not feeling the temperature as much. You're not feeling the grittiness and the individual blades of grass and stuff. You're not really able to feel that as much. And in the research, right, our foot just sensing different temperatures, different textures, and all that stuff, it gives our brain feedback. It helps turn the foot on. So all this does is not forcing your foot in any position. Essentially, all this is these go inside the bottom of them, and the arch of your foot senses that the feedback, and it helps turn your foot on. So it's not forcing your foot. It's not an orthotic, but a lot of the research behind orthotics is your foot senses the orthotic, and it turns the arch on. Well, this is saying let's get rid of all the negatives of orthotics and only get the positives. That's why this Barefoot Science insole. I'm a huge fan of these. I put them in. I wear them when I walk and run in, whether I'm walking and running in my ultras or in my zeros. And the owner of it, it's a very weird story. I reached out to him like a month before he passed away. He passed away, I think, this past December. So he was an older guy, but great to talk to. Really passionate about this. But the research on this is old, but it works. So huge fan of Barefoot Science insoles as well. To go, I mean, they're like $90. Yes, they're expensive, but there's a shoe store near me that sells these, and they have never had like they've sold like 30,000 of these in the past X amount of years. They have never had one of these returned. He was telling me that the
Wow.
other day, which is kind of wild. So if there's an orthotic out there, I'm not a big fan of any of them. This is an insole that actually works. It turns your foot
Yeah.
on, and you don't have to really do anything.
And I feel like I know exactly what you're talking about by turning the foot on because I've done a lot of like minimalist shoes. I've done the whatever the finger shoes, like the Vibrams. I've done just some like really minimalist style shoes, and even Ultra compared to like the ones that I get. The Ultras, like Ultra does have some really padded, like thicker ones, but they also have like very minimalist style, and that's typically where I go towards. But I fractured my foot several years ago, and I was trying to come back to running through the guidance of no one other than my own like I think I can go. And so my fix was, okay, I'll just get the most padded shoe I possibly can. That way I can run with a basically still fractured foot. But I thought it
Yeah.
was good enough. But what I realized in running in those padded shoes was kind of what you're saying. I just felt like my feet didn't know what was going on. I don't know how else to describe it. It was more like I was just like pounding pavement with this like, these super padded shoes on. My foot was like unaware of what was going on, but like you can feel it. You can feel your foot work more when you're striking appropriately and you have a more minimalist like style shoe. So I think ultimately I just know what you're talking about, but you're saying like that's a huge like important factor when you're going out there to run and shoe selection.
Yeah, yeah, no, it's huge. And like when it's funny, the podiatrist who his name's Mark, Dr. Mark Cucuzella, when he was working in the VA, but he like with the VA, I had a clinical there. You don't, I mean, you have some time with patients, but sometimes it's you get him out, you get him in, get him out, and he's like, and it's. I'm sure you know Jerred too, but he's just told me stories of like VA. I mean, their feet are all messed up from wearing boots and they're doing all these things. Like, what can he do with the 15 minutes, 20 minutes he has with them? Right? If it was a PT, great, he could do stuff, but he just has the VA buy these and just gives them to him, and he's like, they work great. Like, what's the minimum? What the easiest thing you can do for your foot health is yes, it's $90 or $100, but get these insoles and just put them in your shoes, and it's going to have it's your foot just going to feel that, and you're going to naturally want to dome and create that arch in your foot. And it's really what, like, when you look at a stability shoe, like what is the stability shoe trying to do? It's trying to, like, most people have more of the hypermobility foot issue where the foot's no more flatter and it's what we call overpronating. Well, how do we prevent that? How do we stop that? Well, there's research has shown shoes do not do that at all. Like, you're just going to overpronate, and it's just maybe helps a little bit of pain. It actually just changes the way the force vector works. It loads a little bit different part of your knee. Like, it does something, but it's really not changing overpronation much. What actually can change that is when you hit the ground. If of course if you're striking the right way, that's half the battle. But if we can get our foot active, press the big toe down, the arch muscles will essentially create the arch and then help you go through a normal amount of pronation and deformation, and then you re-stiffen that arch on the back end. Um, but also, this is great for someone who has a high arch because on the other side of it, if you have a flat foot, your foot it's a really bad shock absorber. You're just not absorbing any shock. Versus on the high arch foot, you're so stiff and rigid. Your bones and your ligaments are taking all the shock, and your arch isn't doing much. So even if you
Mm.
have a high arch foot, you want to get that foot active because you want the muscles to act as the shock absorbers, not the bones and not the ligaments, and plantar fascia doing all the work. So that's why a lot of times, hey, I have plantar fasciitis or plantar fascia issues. Get the arch muscles to work. Allow the natural shock absorbers to be shock absorbers, and your plantar fascia doesn't have to do all that shock absorbing. So whether you have a high arch foot or a low arch foot, or you got plantar fascia, whatever it is, getting your arch active is going to help. So I don't want people to think this is just if you have a flat foot, but even if you have a stiff, rigid foot, getting the arch active, you want those muscles to act as shock absorbers.
That makes sense, man. All right, so we got cadence, we got foot health, and kind of shoe selection, and kind of the goals there. But you mentioned it earlier, like mobility and strength training, obviously going to be big factors here. And I'm sure that we could talk about those two things alone for an hour, but just briefly on the strength training side, how should runners be lifting, or
Yeah.
what are some of the strength training factors that they should be considering, kind of at a general broad view?
Yeah, some of the big stuff. I think a lot of runners think it's glutes. I got to do squats. I got to do my hip thrust, which is great. Like, that stuff is good. But the glutes, unless you're running uphill, they do have a braking effect. They are important, but they actually have a more of a, like a stability effect where they help you control the pelvis. Like you hit the ground, is your knee caving in? Does your hip drop excessively? So the glutes are important, and that's part of it. Like we want to work the glutes, but the two most used muscles when running is it's actually the hamstrings and the calf muscles, in particular the soleus. So making sure we're doing calf raise work, we're doing hamstring work, like a kickstand deadlift. I love like a bent knee calf raise to help get that soleus because that muscle is used a heck of a lot when you walk too. So if you just want to have, I know everyone's always like, oh, my calves are weak and small. I'm like, well, I can't change your genetics, but if you look at runners, like the really good ones, they're not like massive calves, but they're like super defined, like muscular calves. Like that's why that is the powerhouse when running. So I'd say keep doing the glute stuff. That stuff's great. Squats. I love Bulgarian split squats because it just accomplishes running's more of a single leg exercise, which it just, squatting and deadlifting, I want to do that, but that's why I like the kickstand deadlift and the Bulgarian split squat because we can make it a little bit more single leg. And also on the back, it's a little more balanced too. But running, we need a lot of balance with it. And also, when you do a Bulgarian split squat, that back leg, you kind of get a mobility stretch with the quads and the hip flexors every time you go down and up. So it's just, hey, if we're going to put our time and energy into something, we want to get the most bang out of our buck. If we're trying to, like a pushing motion, something you can squat, but if you're like, hey, I want to change it up a little bit, maybe substitute the squat out and let's do some heavy Bulgarian split squats for that like 6 to 10 rep range. So big fan of those. And then core wise, I think a lot of runners think I'm just going to do my planks and my side planks and I isometrically hold them. Well, when we run, there's a lot of rotation that we go through. So I love doing. You could do side planks, but I move the hip up and down, and doing like we could do a parallel press, but then rotate out to the side. So adding on core movements that you could do isometrics, but adding on movement to them, especially through rotation, that like we call it the spinal engine. When you run forwards, if you can optimize your core, your core is going to work when you run. It's not just it's not bracing like a deadlift. It is braced to an extent, but it's activating and it's rotating your shoulders and hips and pelvis from side to side, or from clockwise to counterclockwise, in opposite directions, and we get a lot of energy through that spinal engine. So to train that, it's important just to do some core exercises where we're getting some rotation through the hip and also through the core.
That's awesome, man. And I think a big thing I'm hearing, I mean, I feel like I've been moving this direction a little bit, and I've also I was just hearing it out in the strength and conditioning community is like just single leg, unilateral like stuff. Do you think that is where people should spend most of their time? If let's just say they're limited on time for strength training, is that the biggest bang for their buck as opposed to straight bar deadlift or trap bar deadlift or, back squats? Should they be focusing more on the single leg stuff?
You mean for runners or for just everybody?
Yeah, I would say for runners.
Yeah, I say for runners, if you're like, I only have like 2-3 days to work out, and like one day is going to be an upper day, and I have 2 days for lower. Like, yeah, I would if like that's all you're going to do, I would focus on do the Bulgarian split squat, and I mean you can get. It does take a lot of weight to make a Bulgarian split squat really challenging.
Oh
Like
yeah.
if you've never done it before, hold on to a 30 or a 40. It's especially if you do it the right way. Like people do Bulgarian split squat and they can push a little bit more on the back leg. Like try to silence the back leg and just do the front leg. You can make it very much single leg and very challenging I mean, you can do 50s and do more weight. Like when I do it, I can probably do I'd like get challenging like 50. Maybe I could push 55, 60, but like I could do set a 6 to 8 with a 50, but my back leg's not doing much. Like that it's very hard to do it with the back leg silence. So I'm a big fan of if you're strapped for time, do some single legs. It's almost like you're going to do single leg calf raises versus double leg calf raises, and big fan of doing single leg work. If you're a runner, because you're gonna be on one leg anyway. Let's get you strong that way.
Well, now you have me curious. If you're not a runner, what do you think?
I think it needs to be there for sure.
Okay.
But think of it, when I mean, think about it. I mean, if you're a CrossFitter, I guess it's, what do they do? Like, yeah, I'm sure they do walking lunges and stuff. It's not it's more for them. It's like you're working out your muscle imbalances, and I'm sure we always have a dominant side that's going to be stronger. But even like, hey, if like all you do is work out and, maybe you play soccer on the weekends or whatever your pickup sport is, but we walk too. Like walking there is a time where both feet are on the ground, but there's also a time where one foot's on the ground. And if you got one side that's a lot stronger, I mean, like for instance, the other day I had a CrossFitter come in here where a little bit of back issue on one side, and we're doing farmer carries, and it's like noticeably more like one side the core kicks in, it's great, and the other side it's like, oh man, my back kicks in after like doing the single arm farmer carry for like 30 seconds. I'm like, well, that's the weak side, right? That core isn't able to kick in, so that's why you feel that little back soreness. So I think a lot of us just have these muscle imbalances where uh, we definitely should be doing. I mean, we definitely doing the double leg stuff, but the work on these imbalances, yeah, it just takes instead of doing a double arm farmer carry, do the suitcase carry. Really focus on that engagement. So just bring in more awareness. I think now that I think about it, Jerred, it's doing more kind of unilateral work, just being aware too, right? Like if you're doing that suitcase carry, how do you feel? Is one core, like if I hold the weight on my left side, my right oblique, is that really working? And you switch sides, does it fatigue quicker? And oh man, my back kicks in. Why is it happening? Well, your core is probably weaker on that side. We need to be, we want to be working on these imbalances. So for her, that's what we're doing is loading her up, but also just making sure she's aware of how she's feeling and spending more time on that side. That's the problem issue. That's the problem area.
Awesome, man. Well, I appreciate it. We've hit a lot of interesting stuff, and like I said, we're really just scratching the surface. So, if people want to learn more about you and your work, where should they go? What should they do?
Yeah, I would definitely check me out on Instagram. It's Matt Silver PT on Instagram. And then feel free to check us out at Alpha Project Physio.com. It's Phyzio. That's physio.com. You can just be type in built to run book. It should pop up as well. But you could get it on Amazon. But if you're interested in the book, you can get it from us directly. Like I sign it, I kind of include some things in there, like a sticker and some swag items. So if you want to get a signed copy, I'd recommend getting it from us. By all means, you can get it on Amazon. But most people want the signed copy, so it's cooler if you get it from us if you want the signed one.
That's awesome. Well, I really appreciate it, man. Thank you so much for your time, and everyone, go check out Matt, all of his social accounts, and also grab the book. All right, man. Thanks.
Yeah, thanks, Jerred.